Welcome to the channel. My name is Treehouse, and if you didn't know, I'm a pretty big Pokemon fan. I've played all the classics like Mystery Dungeon, Pokken, and of course the mainline games. But there is one game, however, that stands out to me and many others, and that game is Pokemon Unite. Now this video, much like Lazy Purple's, who I'm definitely not copying this idea from, is not about the balance or the stupid mother trucking paywalls, but how it feels to play the game. I'll be going more in depth with the categories like attackers and even some specific characters for future videos, but for now I just want to explain the basics of how the game's played and how it makes me feel. Now getting into it, let's first talk about Pokemon Unite's roster. It's not hard to find a Pokemon you want to play as, since Pokemon Unite has one of the most wide variety of fun and unique characters. And also Wigglytuff. Finding a character that you want to play is basically the equivalent of asking, do I want waffles or pancakes, bacon or toast, orange juice or apple juice? And even though those are good choices, your opinion is objectively wrong, and the best choice was Snorlax. I mean donuts. And although literally every character is blocked off with some form of currency, it's not that hard to get that currency when you start the game. Now let's get into the juicy stuff, the categories. When you first start playing, you get introduced to 5 different categories of Pokemon: attackers, defenders, all-rounders, speedsters, and supporters. Now don't worry about things getting complicated, because I'm going to summarize all the categories for you 3rd graders at home. Attackers are in charge of dealing large amounts of damage, but not being at the front of the attack because they are weak, fragile, and made of paper mache. Defenders, on the other hand, are big, bulky hunks of muscle that are in charge of being at the front of the fight and taking damage for your teammates, but shouldn't go head to head since you don't deal large bursts of damage. The best way to describe this category is running head first into a battle and acting like a barricade between your ally and your opponent, allowing your ally to more easily make a tactical retreat if they get low on health. All-rounders are the pothole fillers, and by that I mean that all all-rounders are in charge of filling in whatever role is not being utilized, since they are both moderately tanky and moderately a pain in the neck, strong. Speedsters are a complicated category, but they're essentially assassins. They don't usually partake in team fights until they can catch the other team off guard and decimate their defenses one by one. However, it doesn't hurt to have one in a team fight since they're practically Glass Cannon incarnate. So if you tank damage for them as a defender or all-rounder, it'll more than likely pay off in later stages of the game, especially since most speedsters prioritize being higher level than their opponents. Now, supporters are personally my favorite group of people minus Mr. Mime. It should have been Mr. Rhyme, give me my tap dancing boy. Supporters are, as the name implies, in charge of supporting their allies. They don't do that much damage aside from exceptions, and they aren't meant to be at the front of the battle tanking damage, but what they are good at is that sweet, sweet mid-battle healing. You see, in the maps you play on, there are 3 main methods of healing: standing on your goal, I'll explain that later, standing in your base, and eating berries. Now, if your first goal has been destroyed, you lose access to your berries in that lane, which give a ton of health mid-fight. That's where supporters come in. If you have a supporter on your team with you, it's basically a get-out-of-jail-free card to play more aggressively and not be punished as much. Some supporters, such as Comfey and Blissey, support your team by healing you mid-fight, while other supporters, such as Mr. Mime and Wigglytuff, support your team by being a distraction and not dying. I want you dead! Now that we've talked about the roles you can play, let's get into the game you can play. Pokemon Unite has 3 main modes for you to play on: Ranked, Standard, and Quick. Ranked is for people who want to test what they know against opponents around their skill level, but sometimes in lower ranks, players don't know how to use a controller. Standard, on the other hand, is a coin flip for whether or not you get a competent team who's touched a controller before, or people who were born 3 minutes ago. Quick mode is essentially Mario Party. You probably won't play this mode much, so let's just move on to... The character selection screen is where you get to select the Pokemon you want to play as. If you're playing Standard, it doesn't really matter who you play so long as you don't care about your win rate or the sanity of your teammates. Ranked, however, requires that you play a Pokemon you've already practiced with and have figured out how to play, or you'll essentially be bullied by the other team while learning to play the game. Which is fine if you don't care about your win rate or your rank, but the people you're playing with probably care about those digital titles and don't want to see someone throwing the game. Looking at you, veterans! Take this match, for example, from one of my live streams, twitch.tv/treehouse, where I went to pick Trevenant, but then accidentally picked Dodrio. This is what's known to the fanbase as throwing. And while we did win the match, we still could have very easily lost because I hadn't practiced with Dodrio beforehand and was practically just spamming buttons as I learned the character. Now, when it comes to picking your character in ranked, it's also very important that you tell your teammates which lane you're going into. The lane you should pick depends on the Pokemon you're playing, but if you're skilled enough, it doesn't matter too much. But as a general rule, defenders and supporters should never go in jungle. The most important thing you can do when selecting a lane, though, is never pick the central area, known as the jungle, with someone else. The jungle is vital for whoever's going to carry your team, and if more than one person is using it, there will not be enough EXP for either of you to help one of the lanes. Top lane is your map's Sahara Desert. It doesn't contain a lot of EXP, so you need to pick Pokemon like high damage attackers or super beefy defenders who can make the most out of their lackluster resources until the jungler joins or Regieleki spawns. Bottom lane, on the other hand, is your team's EXP Oasis. It's best to pick Pokemon with great early game pressure so you can help top path as soon as possible. Or you could pick Pokemon with great late game so they can get their level 8 or 9 super early. Supporters are also a good pick for bottom path since they thrive on getting their healing moves and stupid singing move, looking at you, as quickly as possible. The middle lane, or jungle, is the largest XP farm at the start of the game. It is also the most vital part to any Pokemon Unite game. Without the jungle, there would be no way for people playing on their own, who are known as solo queuers, to carry the game. But besides that, it is vital to have a Pokemon get their power spike early on so they can break any stalemate in a lane, be able to get a further advantage, or stop a disadvantaged lane. Speedster type Pokemon are specifically designed around the jungle, but other Pokemon like Cinderace and Tyranitar also thrive in the jungle. Held items are your Pokemon's bread and butter. Your main goal is to utilize them to impact how you play the game and how your Pokemon performs. Held items are dependent on the Pokemon, but some like Muscle Band and Focus Band are pretty universally good. Items like Attack Weight, Razor Claw, Scope Lens, and Weakness Policy are pretty good on most attack stat Pokemon, and items like Choice Specs, Wise Glasses, Special Attack Specs, and Slick Spoon are good on special attack stat Pokemon. Characters like Cinderace and Greninja take advantage of held items like Attack Scarf or Muscle Band, which increase the user's attack speed. These items are vital to a character's kit due to these characters constantly basic attacking throughout the game. Some items are good for specific Pokemon, like how Talonflame and Sableye are the only Pokemon who benefit from Floatstone. Sadly, some select items are too specific to be useful, like Rocky Helmet, Assault Vest, and Drain Crown. Leftovers are incredible in competitive Pokemon, so that must have carried over to Unite, right? Right? Last but not least are the Boost Emblems. Boost Emblems are basically your Pokemon's gummy vitamins. They help you out, but they're not a necessity. You don't want to get the wrong gummy prescription, however, because they could end up making your Pokemon slightly worse. If you're playing a defender, you'll probably be playing with a combination of white and brown or white and blue. If you're playing an attacker, you would be running green and black or brown and white. If you're playing a speedster, you should do your own research for a build since every speedster is unique. But most speedsters benefit from brown and white emblems, excluding Gengar. If you're playing an all-rounder, you should probably be using the defender's emblems or the attacker's emblems. Last but not least, all supporters, except Sableye, should be running green and black since they'll benefit the most from the cooldowns, and healing is based on your Pokemon's special attack. Now, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to impact how you play the game or even how you feel about the game. I'm just trying to give you a good guide and tell you how I feel. And some of you may be thinking, well, Treehouse, random person who I found the channel of, how do I know I can trust you and believe that you're a credible source? And that's because I've been in a Tommy in a video.